The Lumberjack's Last Stand. Chapter 1. The Solitude. I've always been a solitary man, even before I moved up to these mountains to live as a lumberjack. I've always preferred to be alone. But it's different here, in the mountains. There's something about the quiet and the peace that it offers that I can't find anywhere else. I spend hours upon hours in the woods, cutting down trees and hauling them back to my cabin. It's hard work, but it's honest work, and it's all I need. But that all changed one day while I was out hunting. Chapter 2. The Figure. I was making my way through the woods, taking my time as I always do. It was early in the morning and the fog was thick, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead of me. That's when I saw it. A figure moving in the shadows. I immediately felt uneasy and my heart began to race. I've never seen anything like this before. The figure seemed to be gliding through the woods, not making a sound. It was as if it wasn't really there. I raised my rifle and aimed at the figure. I hesitated for a moment, and then I pulled the trigger. But to my surprise, the figure just disappeared. Chapter 3. The Hunt. I knew I had to find out what that figure was. I spent the next few days searching the woods, but I couldn't find any trace of it. I began to doubt that I had even seen it in the first place. But then, one night, I heard a noise. It was a strange, ethereal sound that seemed to be coming from deep in the woods. Tonight won't be the night I find out, though. I was too damn scared. So the next morning, I set out early, rifle in hand, and followed the direction of the sound from last night. I walked for hours and hours until I finally came upon a clearing. And there, in the center of the clearing, stood the figure. But this time, it was not alone. There was a strange, glowing object hovering in the sky above it. My heart began to race as I realized that I was staring at an alien spacecraft. Chapter 4. The Tunnel. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I watched in shock as the figure entered the craft and it took off into the sky. As it disappeared into the clouds, I noticed something strange. There was a small opening in the ground, right where the craft had been hovering. I couldn't resist my curiosity. I approached the opening and peered inside. It was a tunnel leading deep into the earth. I could hear the sound of cries coming from the distance. My heart raced and I knew I had to find out what was happening. Chapter 5. The Abyss. The tunnel was dark and damp. I could feel the cold, dank air closing in around me. I could hear the cries getting louder and louder. Finally, I came upon a large cavern. In the center of the cavern was a deep pit, and there, I saw people, humans being chained and beaten. Some of them were crying out for help. My heart sank as I saw what was happening. I knew that I had to act fast, but then I heard something moving. I turned around and saw a group of creatures, twisted and evil, emerging from the shadows. I knew that I had to fight for my life. Chapter 6. The Battle. I raised my rifle and fired at the creatures. But to my horror, they just kept coming. They were relentless, and there were too many of them. I was outnumbered and outmatched. I knew that I had to use every ounce of strength and skill that I had to survive. I fought with all my might, using my axe to slash at the creatures. The battle was fierce and brutal, but I refused to back down. I pushed myself harder and harder, determined to save the people trapped in the pit. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the creatures fell. I was covered in blood and panting heavily, but I had done it. I had saved the people. Chapter 7. The Rescue. I quickly untied the people and helped them to their feet. They were weak and battered, but alive. I could see the relief and gratitude in their eyes as I led them out of the cavern and back to the surface. As we emerged from the tunnel, I couldn't believe what I saw. The sky was dark and filled with smoke. I could hear the distant sound of explosions and gunfire. It was then that I realized that the Earth was under attack. Chapter 8. The Escape. I knew that we had to get back to my cabin as soon as possible. It was our only chance of survival. I led the group through the woods, moving as quickly as we could. But the creatures were everywhere, hunting us at every turn. We fought our way through the woods, using whatever weapons we could find. But we were constantly on the run, never knowing when the next attack would come. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached my cabin. We barricaded the doors and windows and waited for the worst to pass. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. The attack on the Earth lasted for days. We were trapped in my cabin, listening to the sounds of destruction outside. But we were alive, and that was all that mattered. As the days passed, we slowly realized the gravity of the situation. The creatures had won. The Earth was now under their control. We knew that we had to find a way to fight back. But we were just a small group of survivors against an entire alien invasion. Chapter 10. The Plan. We knew that we couldn't just sit and wait for the end. We had to take action. We spent hours discussing and planning, trying to find a way to defeat the creatures. Finally, we came up with a plan. We would gather other survivors and build a resistance. Together, we would take back our planet. We knew that it wouldn't be easy. The creatures were powerful and ruthless, but we were determined to save our home, no matter the cost. Chapter 11. The Recruitment. We set out into the woods, searching for other survivors. We found them in small groups, hiding and afraid, but we offered them hope and a chance to fight back. We gathered as many survivors as we could find and brought them back to the cabin. Together, we began to build our resistance. We trained and armed ourselves as best we could. We knew that the next battle would be unlike any other we had ever fought before. Chapter 12. The Assault. We set out into the woods, our hearts pounding with adrenaline and fear. The creatures had taken over our planet, and it was up to us to take it back. We were a ragtag group of survivors, but we were united in our cause. As we approached the creature's stronghold, we could hear the sound of gunfire and explosions in the distance. We knew that the battle had already begun. We moved forward quickly and quietly, trying to get as close as we could without being seen. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a deafening screech. The creatures had spotted us. We raised our weapons and opened fire. The battle was intense. The creatures were larger and more aggressive than we ever could have imagined. We were outnumbered, and the creatures were fierce. We were forced to retreat, but we refused to give up. We regrouped, came up with new tactics, and launched another assault. The ground shook as the creatures charged toward us, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. We fought back with everything we had, our rifles blazing and our blades cutting through the air. Bodies of the fallen creatures littered the ground, but there seemed to be no end to them. We were exhausted and injured, but we refused to back down. We kept fighting, knowing that it was our only chance for survival. We lost many of our own that day, but we pushed on, driven by our determination to save our planet. And finally, after hours of intense combat, we emerged victorious. Chapter 13. The Victory. The creatures were defeated, and the stronghold was ours. We had done the impossible and taken back our planet. But at what cost? We took stock of our losses. Too many of our friends and comrades had fallen. We tended to the injured and mourned for the fallen, but we knew we couldn't dwell on the past. We pushed forward, knowing that the work was far from over. We couldn't rest until every last creature was eliminated and our world was safe again. With the strength of our comrades and the memories of our fallen driving us forward, we set out to reclaim the rest of our planet, one battle at a time. We would rebuild and create a new world where we could live in peace. We knew it wouldn't be easy, but we were determined to make it happen. And in the end, the sacrifices we made and the hardships we endured would be worth it to have our freedom and our world back.